Ta-da! And welcome to Josef's Model Railway, albeit it's very messy, and Toy Room. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. And I'd love to welcome you now to a new section of the layout, which has got a name and has now been under construction for quite some time at the moment. So while you can't see it just in front of me, here is where the bowling alley sits. But during some other construction we're doing, I do have the bowling alley just tucked aside. The great thing about the modular connection, it's just sitting underneath where our fiddle yard is, which is also part of the next project. But I'd like to welcome you now to the spot here. So as you'll recall, the bowling alley is sitting here. We've got our substation, the fuel depot, the billboard, which is just out for the moment, and then this little gap here that wraps around to where our canal is at the moment. Now, the little section just toward the canal, we've still got to work on that. So we're not talking about that today. We're talking about the little bit between the billboard and here, which I would like to welcome you now officially to Percivals Landing. And you better believe it, I'm referring, the name came, of course, inspired on a coastal scene from the wonderful pelican that is Mr. Percival from the South Australian icon of a movie called Storm Boy, which was filmed in the Coorong.
And with the help of Mr. Percival, the best friend a boy ever had.
So we've got a bit of a project to undergo here, which we're going to break up into, we'll call it 3 videos. I'm just not sure how many we're going to need. And if you're wondering what my hand's doing down here, it's because for whatever reason, some sort of an adhesive has dripped or leaked onto this part of the cabinet, and I don't think I can ever get it off again. So let's not spend too much time looking at that, shall we? Percivals Landing, what a wonderful little situation. So we've got our billboard at the moment. Now there are going to be a few sections about how this is going to be broken up. So we've got the billboard, which will be featured again as we start to join it up. And what this is also going to be the home for our Batter Up Chippy Box, which was our little shop that we did create a few videos ago. So this is going to find its permanent home at the moment. And we've got a few other little surprises you'll see as we attack the project for what we're doing. But basically, we needed somewhere for that little shop to go. A little bit of greenery where people can sit down, have fish and chips for lunch, or do whatever. The bit that I think was going to make an interesting video we might talk about in the future is what would the rest of your layout look like if it wasn't confined by those requirements. In other words, at Noodle Knocker Junction, where the golf course is, obviously the rest of that part would come out to a golf course. What we've talked about here would be a little bit of forestry, but it also opens out from the canal into the waterway, going into a bit of a coastal scene as it carries on. And that is a little bit interesting because what we're going to do is the canal is over here and is sitting at about this height, or let's say at about the height of my hips, or the lower part here. So while we're going to have the shop here, we are going to experiment and try our best to create a bit of a boardwalk, so to speak. But it would be a multi-layered boardwalk that, while you'll see the first part here, it obviously would step down to another layer or landing. And then it would come down to the final one, which you could probably put together in your head, would then match up to the height of where the canal or jetty or pier or whatever this could be is going on. So that'll just give a little bit of interest in it. But I don't want to hold you up too much because, as I said, we're probably going to break it up into 3 parts. So the first one is getting a bit of the groundwork done. Then we'll come back in and see what we can do with this whole decking situation and get some trees and lights and whatever happens. And then the final one is trying to complete the scene. I will just point this out because we will come back to it again. While I did put a little bit of ballast just sort of on the shoulders of where the track is, indicating there's some sort of a walkway that the workers could come across from the petroleum depot over and get their lunch or whatever else. That section of a walkway hasn't been 100% completed. So while you'll get a bit of an indication, it could be saying, looks a bit rough. That's because I haven't finished it yet, because I want to experiment with something new there. So at least we've got enough to give you a bit of a conceptual idea of what's going in. So that's what we're getting up to in this one. Let's see how we go. Let's get cracking, shall we? Here's the space that we're going to use. It's just where the billboard was, and the same process as the bowling alley. We're just going to take our XPS foam board, and we're just going to quickly carve it up into shape. You can see the billboard there. And we'll start to make a few rudimentary markings of where the building will be. Slow going, and we're just obviously using the hot wire with this attachment on it, and I'm gently just carving this out. Now we have to work very slowly, and don't worry too much because we're going to clean it up with our sandpaper and layer it up with the dirt to get what we need. But I think, as you can see, the shop would be over here. The fence is going to run across that back line, and a little section where the kids would be playing, making their BMX track or jumps or whatever, and we'll link it onto the billboard. Can't really give you good profiles, but you're going to have to take my word for it. It will turn out, I hope. Here's a quick way just to get a bit of texture. I usually do this with a stone, but because I've actually got some of what we're doing with Faulty Towers over there, this is the Woodland Scenics pre-done rock. And as you can see, it's pretty gnarly. So as you can see, I'm just literally pressing it down around areas here. It'll help give a bit more texture later. Of course, we're going to add the dirt and the stones, but it's not a bad way to go to just fill in and create a little more natural ground cover for those bits that might miss out on a bit of grass or something. So, and just using your traditional type of a pen that's got a bit of a curved or interesting kind of end to it. Just these white bits I want to point out now, because you won't know what I've done. It's just PVA. Mod Podge works very well as a sealer when you're using this foam board stuff. I'm just going to use a bit of PVA at the moment because I'm not really trying to create deep puddles or anything, but I do want to create some dried out ones. So when I apply paints and things, I don't want any reactions to this, because I want to try and want to layer it up just a little bit to create some interest in these areas. So it's just PVA, so you know. It'll also reinforce, because as we've pushed down and getting to the thinner part of this, it's also going to start to become a little more fragile. So this should lock it in nicely. Certainly no professional BMX track, but just those sort of hills and jumps you'd see in a spare block or something somewhere in your town is pretty much what we're going for. That'll be next to the shop here. Just regarding how I'm shaping the jumps and things like that, that's just our Woodland Scenics Smooth It compound. That's a nice, quick, easy drying one, and a lick of brown paint and dirt. And of course the little linking bit we need. It's only if we ever need to pull all this out, but anyway, we can't forget him, so we better get his dirt on as well. Don't worry if you thought I was dumping too much dirt on the other one. There's baking paper underneath, and once that's dry, we tap it off and we'll just recycle all of that dirt again. That's pretty much my approach. The same thing here. Doesn't matter if a little bit bleeds off here and there. Quick suck with the vacuum, and we've got it. Leave this one to dry, and we'll leave this one to dry. See what we end up with. So I'm sorry I forgot to film this bit, but basically, as you can see, we've literally just taken our cobblestones that we had cut out and we've just laid it down. We're going to do this section by section, and it's just weighted down. Now, we're not using a CA because it can react with the foam board, so we're just using the clear Gorilla Glue, and of course they do advise 2 hours clamping and 24 hours to dry. We're going to do it in sections, so this is the first section that runs almost the entire length here, and then we'll come in and reinforce it with the next bit and carry on. But we're going to leave it for 24 hours. Pick this up on the other side. We want to get this pathways and everything in before we start doing static grass and the buildings and the stonework and everything else, and then we'll start doing that all as one. Well, this is pretty useless, but let's try and get a camera angle going for you here and hope it's going to work. So we've just given that 24 hours to dry, and there's that pathway. This is the interesting bit we're going to come back and talk about. And it's a shame that you can see this is for the edging for pavement, and we could have reversed it, but it doesn't actually quite work that way. But that's okay. We're going to make this thing work. I just licked my finger there because it likes part of it to be moistened. We don't need much. It's just a really light application to help for the quick bond. We leave it upside down in this way so I know how much glue we will need to put on. Anywhere something might look like that's absolutely smooth and that's quite a good join, but a little tuft of grass will always make things like that disappear. We're going to weight this thing down, which means you're going to lose your camera angle. So I'm using this battery for the weight. I think you get the idea. Okay, let's spend 48 hours. Now, before we proceed, it's just so ironic that when I typed in Percivals Landing, you'll actually find Percival Landing Park in Olympia in Washington in the United States, which is ironic because here are the fishing vessels and here is the exact type of boardwalk or decking or what you'd see as jetties that I'm focusing on here. So even with its information board, we've nailed it. However, that being said, this particular type of decking and or boardwalk you would see is actually in the township of mine in a lifestyle village where my clients are, and I think it's pretty much just the simplicity I need, albeit it's about 1 kilometre away from the actual pier, but still perfect. Let's try and do our best. Now, using the scrap pilings that we were using for our canal wall, I still had a few of these, but we did need to snip them down to length, so a quick chip chop there, and we're going to line them up now, steel ruler against a straight edge, and basically just dropping down a little layer of PVA glue and taking an extra rod that's measured to what we need. And this is basically the process for constructing our little boardwalk section that of course would step down to other levels that are beyond the layout itself. Yes, I corrected that sign on that BP tanker. Leave that to dry, weighted down. Let's have a look. All right, let's see what we got here. Oops, I forgot to take that bit of metal out. That's a bit of a problem. That's all right. It's pretty good. A little bit of an angle though, isn't it? For the minute, the focus is going to be this boardwalk. As I've said, I'm not 100% happy, but we're going to make this work a bit. The problem is that while it doesn't look too bad, sort of some sleepers, generally on the docks and that, there's almost a white type of a grey that starts to age up. Now, I'm not going to come in with a blade and scrape it up, although that's tempting. I've got another idea up my sleeve that we're going to try and do now. We're going to take the watercolor at the moment, and the plan of attack here is we're going to mix up pretty much the color you see here. This is white with a ever so little bit of gray going on from some black that we mixed up. Now I'm going to liberally apply this, and we're going to leave it overnight to dry. When we come back in the morning, we're going to take a stiff brush and try and create some streaks. I don't know if it's going to work. We can always go back to where we are at. Leave this and come back to that. My other phone is doing something, and I remembered the old 6S does shoot in 4K, so we'll carry on with that. What I'm just doing here is I'm just taking a blade and I'm just literally randomly sort of scoring and scratching things into it just to try and break it off and give it a bit of a boardwalk type of a look. So we'll carry on doing this and see what we can do. I also then experimented just taking a lead pencil, both mechanical and regular, and then just trying to go through. The problem with the lead is it's a little bit shiny. It comes up, so when I'm looking head on it, it looks a bit too shiny, and that's not right. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to carry on. I'm going to come back over with a light wash to bring out our these gaps a bit better, although we'll keep scribing. See, too much with the knife, and I'm going to dig into it. And then after I've done that, I think I'm going to come over with some pastels maybe to soften this up. I'm just going to keep working on this. I know it's not a very big boardwalk, but because it's right on the lip of where people are going to see it, we really do need to try and keep this one looking pretty interesting. There's not going to be much else happening off that part of the scene. So this is the draw card. Now my favourite model wash, a quick dust over, looking a bit dark. So we're just going to come back with a little bit of an umber wash onto it now. And I've just taken a few different colours and painted some key planks. And now this isn't looking too bad. Right, well you can see we've just obviously taken the footprint of the shop and put it down, because now we're going to come with a second layer of dirt now, and we just basically create the edging around some of this as required. What we've also just got here is this bit of boardwalk, which is going to hopefully just sit into place here, and we'll landscape around it. And I think what we're going to do is put a couple of these lamp posts on either side. Now, they seem quite large for the scene, but they're going to be toward the front, so hopefully it gives a nice appearance. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it based on the light that we have, but the black one is this one here, and then you can see I've just taken a little bit of rust and I've been dabbing it around the edges to trying to create a little bit of detail. It's not finished, I've just been experimenting. But I guess the idea is to have that. And the only other piece we need to do with this also, we also just try to correct where these two scenes are going to join up. That's around the wrong way. But anyway, is we are going to attempt, obviously it would step down, and then from there you'd obviously have a series of boardwalks that come down, and then they'd match up to where the canal is to where this is. Hence, we need to come up with some sort of a sign here to let you know where you are. Because you may not have caught it in the first time round when we were doing the bowling alley, but basically what I do is I just take some tape where the building is, and then I put it, there's actually 2 layers of tape here, as you can probably see. And the whole idea is when I'm doing the dirt and dump it around, it just sort of creates a little bit of a shoulder that's going to come up nicely with the building. And when the glue is still dry, we gently remove the tape so it's going to set, not interfere with the tape, and then the building can sit down perfectly. So that's what this approach is. It may take a little extra time, but the results are well worth it, especially if you want to have a building you can remove and on sell later in the future. So we just repeat the process. We usually put down 100% PVA glue here, nice and thick, you can see, and brush it in and just dump sand right onto it. Oh, how did this happen? This room is constantly a mess, and I seem to ruin the carpet more every day. Let's leave it to dry for a couple of days, upside down, tap, 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 tap. We can recycle all that dirt and just pour it back off into the dirt container again for future use. We check our boardwalk is all fitting together. And again, now we're going to put the stones around the edge, just paying careful attention to layer that in. It takes a little bit of time, but I think it works really well. I also do one final dusting of dirt because I'm after a slightly different approach here. We're going to be doing a little more work to this area. Back on the chopper now, and we create a couple of little concrete slabs. These are going to be used to hold our lamp posts in place. And of course, all we did is we drill a hole in them neatly so our cord can fit in. I think there's a 1mm drill bit there. And then from there, we're just going to put a little bit of the AK concrete over it. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, I think it might have just been a grey paint. Either way, here we are. Well, at the moment, time has been rather limited. These little concrete slabs that we've been knocking up here, if you've been wondering what all this is about, this is going to be fitting accordingly to fit our lamp posts into. So that's what all this is about. So they're not that important. We are just going to come along now and shake off our excess. You can see as we're building up a bit of an edge there, and we add some greenery, that's going to look okay. Same thing with this one. not going to waste any of that, but I think you can start to see the definition that we've started to create here. Now, we're still not done with this yet. This is usually where I'd probably stop, but we've still got to do a bit more with what's going on with the outdoor eating area. So, but for the moment, these two sections are going to be put to the side for a minute. And a welcome distraction. This was the graffiti I needed with Mr. Squiggle that's actually attached to the bowling alley, and that was attached at the process of where we are building Percivals Landing. It was done after the bowling alley video. Just take a little bit of tape and we're going to randomly put it in places where we don't want the static grass to fall, so it looks like it's where the footsteps are from people and tables constantly sitting there kicking their feet, and it's not the most perfectly mowed section everyone can get to, but we add static grass and that's where we're going to stop it for the minute. Let's pick this one up in the next video. Well, girls and boys, I hate to break up a good thing, but we're going to stop it here. Don't panic. We're not going to talk about anything else or anything else. Of course, I love where we're at the moment, but for the minute, we're just going to stop it here, or this is just going to get far too long because there's a lot of footage and we're covering a lot. I think you can see we've made some tremendous progress. So we're just going to stop it there. And girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you so much for joining me. Please do stay safe, and I can't wait to see you in that next one. Toodles!